let's just have a chat about what were some of
Mhm.
the things your family was struggling with before you reached out to Med to Glad.
Yeah, honestly, I thought parenting was a unique phenomena before, and studying it through my own lens really came from my own quest. I've got two beautiful children, twins, a boy-girl twin, that are going to be 6 in about a month. And what I was finding I was struggling most with individually was my temper and expectations for what a father should be. I did some reconnaissance or research on my own, had my own personal therapist, had a marital therapist, and wasn't able to have the fulfilling conversation with either of them. Was getting some data regarding both of them, but when it came to parenting, I felt off on my own, and I really felt as I researched parenting on my own with some guidance from my own therapist and the marital therapist. Um, it really was interesting because the research I found was like, okay, I found a model that worked for me, but it just reinforced what some of my biggest challenges. And what I was struggling with was my temper. And I came from a household where not very strict authoritative, but very, confident, driven kind of male. You can't have discipline unless there's some formal, whether it be a fist or not a fist like a punch, but like, a strong fisted kind of, hand on the table, or a strong language use. And so I felt like discipline, you had it to be negative. There has to be some type of negative response to behavior, but I felt guilty all the time. I love my kids. And what I've learned is that they're incredibly vulnerable humans. They're the same, but they're very, very vulnerable. And you have to speak to them with great curiosity. The energy I would bring into the room a lot of times was real high level of energy, positively. And I would come into rooms and just be like, hey, I'm going to blow the room up with excitement. We're all going to go sledding and hit the playground and do all this stuff. But I found that it really was me just trying to fulfill some needs that I had. And I learned that you can parent calmly, and it's actually much more rewarding for myself. I don't need to entertain my children. I don't need them to like be blown away every day with some great adventure. Literally, child-led playtime is one of my favorite things now. But it took me months to figure out that, to be calm. There you can always run and check your email, or always, check what's going on at work, or flip a load of laundry. But my day isn't about checking boxes. It's about creating a calm and safe space for my two beautiful children. And from there, this beautiful thing happened with my marriage, where I think my wife felt kind of forced into therapy. I wasn't looking at marital therapy like something's wrong. I was like, hey, we're in a good place. How do we make it great? Let's actively work on it. But I think it came off kind of judgmental, or like, hey, something's wrong with her. And clearly that wasn't my goal. But by working with you, it was fascinating. The things that really changed for me was the family meetings. And then we do a weekly meeting, my wife and I. So there's just this point where you can be connecting with your family, and really slowing down, and if not asking them every day what they need in a calm way, at least on a weekly basis, creating that space for the family, and creating an environment where there isn't yelling, there isn't I guess loud parenting tactics. It's more discussion based. And for me, I'm actively working on my language and how I speak. So instead of, hey, don't climb on the chair, feet go on the ground. So you can discipline without even actually disciplining. You just use different language, and it helps free me from guilt, because I'd end the day, feeling great about the day, but then there was that one lingering event where I raised my voice with my son, or I didn't give my daughter enough time to complete a task where I should have just been immersed with her. So just making space for the kids. And really for me, it feels almost like there's still challenges, obviously, but guilt is not so prevalent in myself. And then that guilt would turn into anger. And then that anger would turn into, me feeling disconnected from my family. So I just feel really well, or feel really connected to my wife and children more than ever.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So I'm going to go back
Mhm.
to a few of the pieces that you said.
Yeah.
One of them was that you had learned a parenting model that reinforced what I would have called really strict, firm limits and boundaries.
Hmm.
And that is, as we know, like that's an important component of the Mad to Glad blueprint, because that boundary, that container can create safety and predictability for kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's not tempered with some of the things you're talking about that I know you've sought in your own therapeutic journey, like mindfulness and being
Mm-hmm.
present and showing up in a way that's calm, so that it's enjoyable for the whole family to be in the same room together.
Mm-hmm.
You learn to really have the whole picture. So yes, you can have boundaries and firm limits, but it doesn't have to be shouting or like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of fist on the table sort of energy.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of talk to me about your kids' energy and their behaviors and your relationship with them before learning some of these brain-based tools with me compared to
Mm-hmm.
now.
Boy, I found myself apologizing to my kids a lot before. I was always trying to explain to them why I raised my voice at the end of the night, kind of decompressing. Hey, sorry, I raised my voice earlier. I wouldn't even say my emotional intelligence has come so far from your training, because it's allowed me to help not be so, I guess, mean to myself, and be like, hey, you're 8 out of 10 times you're going to get it right. There's a few chances, so don't beat yourself up all the time, but that guilt can turn into other things. And I was putting my kids in these awkward positions of, they're listening to their father apologize, but they're not listening to their father say how am I going to correct this? And I've learned a lot about parenting, where apology is very important, to be vulnerable and open. But I think for me, I was never exposed to, and we're going to do this to avoid it, so that avoidance. But again, I'm not sure that those conversations were even healthy for a 5-year-old, because it might have been a little too heavy, too intense, and I shouldn't put that on my children. So personally, I believe that's why I have a therapist, or individuals who I can talk to in a safe place, where I don't have to shift my questions, or get all meta about everything and put that on the kids. And what I found out was that if I'm just calm, and I've realized there's certain triggers. I have a really intense and exciting job, but also if I'm in that work brain, I'm very easily triggered, because I have to, for my work, I have to kind of go through multiple steps to get to the conclusion. And if I get interrupted, I almost have to start over, because I want to make sure I have to be really thorough. So I really, when I get home, my phone goes away. And if it can't go away, I tell my wife, hey, I've got something coming up. And I'm just communicating more clearly what I need with my children and my wife, and letting them know, hey, I might have to work a little bit tonight, but I really want to spend time with you now. And just setting those expectations, because I had conversations, and my son really shocked me a few times, where he talked to me like an adult, and I was like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be putting him in these. And I'm all for growth and maturity, but hey, Dad, when you raised your voice, it really scared me. And even when I was like, oh, I wasn't yelling, I was just trying to motivate, like, hey, time to brush your teeth, kind of escalating volume even triggers him now. And so I've made a commitment to myself to not even try to raise my voice with my kids, because it really has an adverse impact on my son. And I want to try to deprogram that tension and create safety and calmness, because even if I start to elevate, he's a more sensitive guy, and I need to treat him differently than I treat my daughter. And that's what I've really learned with kids, is that it's reinforced that we're all humans, and you just have to approach your spouse, your kids, strangers, but mainly people, you have to approach them with curiosity. If I have an agenda with my kids, I better tell them what the agenda is. Hey, we've got time to do this, but then it's time for that. And they appreciate that, but you got to leave space. You can't, kids aren't I like to get the dishes done, do the laundry, somehow feed the kids all at the same time. And I was thinking I was a master of my own space, but what I was doing was not doing any of them effectively. And so just slowing down and focusing on communication with the kids in a curious way. And then that translated to my wife too. So I find this new growth in my relationship with my wife has just been spectacular, because kind of just applying that same element of, hey, this is a human who deserves respect and curiosity, not just how's your day going, but hey, is there anything exciting happening or anything scary happening we can talk about? And just having those conversations on a weekly basis has given us all space, even though we're still very busy. it gives us that space to, or at least for me, I know, hey, on Friday, I get to talk to my wife for an hour without any interruption. And so it's just it's really helped from a communication standpoint. And then from parenting, just not having to be, you don't have to be aggressive or I'm finding that modern masculinity is actually being ultra calm, keeping your composure. And being a man is not muscular, like, bulldoze through everything. It's actually the inverse. It's how can you be just, the water that flows around things, or just absorb people's information and emotions. And I can't tell you how much more fun parenting is, knowing if, my son had a meltdown the other day because he forgot to ask his friends to come to a birthday party, and he was end of a long day and he was way overreacting, but just sitting next to him and allowing him the time to cool down, he came up with his own idea that even though his friends had left, he's like, hey, can we just call him? I'm like, oh yeah, we can call him. And then he composed himself, asked his friends the question, and this thing that had him on the ground crying, minutes earlier, just through sitting by him and not saying anything, not trying to talk him through it, but just sitting right next to him and letting him know I was there. We ended up hugging, and then he ended up calling him, and everything was great. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences, because I had learned that from you, and specifically your focus on me and what my triggers are, and to identify what space I need helped me it helped the parenting experience. It was one of, like I said, a really rewarding time. So.
Yeah. And that's such a beautiful story.
Thank you.
So thank you. That's recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I'm picturing, I remember when we first started, some of your goals were like getting the kids to listen and transition smoothly and being on the same page in your marriage. That story that you just said, where you sat next to your son on the couch and had like a vulnerable conversation, and then you guys were able to work through it. What would you say to somebody who's type A and likes to have a plan and would say that's too woo-woo and soft? Like, that type of parenting is not what I'm going for.
Yeah, boy, that's tough. I mean, honestly, I consider myself, I come from a very open family, but very like, you do your job, you stick in your lane. There isn't a lot of time. If you want to express yourself, you can, but you got to get your tasks done. And there's no in between. You achieve your goal, or your goal hasn't. So to me, I learned in my own therapy a few years ago that stop using words like failure and success. There's a wide berth. So for a type A personality, I think to me, it's been challenging. It took me 3 years of individual therapy to just be open to tell my wife, this makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure why, but could we talk about this? And maybe not now, like just being able to be assertive and not aggressive. I'm priding myself on just removing aggressive behavior in my family, because I'm not sure why you'd ever use that unless it was in a humorous, maybe a joke or something. But I don't know why you'd use aggressive behavior, because I thought in my life that you needed to be aggressive, especially when you're right. But with children, there is such a wide, your goal could be to get them to brush your teeth, but there are millions of different ways to do that. You could sing a song, or you could do something, or you could do something out of the ordinary. But for me, whatever it's for the child, right? It's the first thing I've done in my life, parenting, where I've loved my wife and I've committed to her, and I think I've made sacrifices for her. But when it comes to kids, for me, it's almost affected me in my work, in my relationship with my other family and friends and my clients, to just slow down and really focus on what the individual's saying. And now that isn't always practical, especially with a lot of our occupations, especially when you know the answer to your client's question, you just want to get to it, right? Solve the problem. But it actually is deepening my relationships with my clients. It's deepening my relationships with my friends. I'm going back to old friends and be like, yeah, I really like this person. I never see them anymore. But I think specifically being vulnerable for a type A person might be an incredible challenge, just to be able to say, I am vulnerable right now, and I don't know why. But I don't necessarily try to confuse my kids with that type of language. I try to let them know that we have a thing in our household is recognize the emotion. Is there something we can do to help with that emotion? Or recognize the emotion and it makes me feel proud of you, or great because you're being really mature right now. That shows you're a caring person. And just really opening up the language to just a lot of love language. These poor guys and girls, smaller, so we have to recognize that, but that doesn't mean I think we should treat them with more respect, because I came from a household where it was very task oriented and, success was lined up. But for parents, know that it's so black and white. I think it's more about a feeling that you go to bed each day and you feel good, or you did your best. We all make mistakes. There's no perfect parent out there, but really, I enjoy it because at my job, I've got to be intense. I've got to be the expert. But at home, I can kind of feel my way through situations and also say, I don't know. I really don't understand. I spent a number of years almost replicating the parenting style that I think I came from, and was quickly like, this is not effective. And I feel guilty all the time with all this testosterone flowing. And I didn't like who I was, and just it's kind of fun to be this calm, peaceful person, or trying to be a calm, peaceful person at home. And it's interesting when I apply it in my workspace that it's actually helping me there too. I don't need 100 clients to be successful. I need 10 really great clients that will spread the word for me, so that kind of thing. So it's just really helped me recenter myself as a person and a father. So.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I was really tuning into you as you were talking about hearing your children and how that applies to all humans, and that, these little beings who are still developing are even more vulnerable. So if we, as the external person, can recognize what's beneath the behavior, recognizing the internal stress that they're experiencing, recognizing the powerlessness that they experience if parenting is too authoritarian, excuse me. It just creates that vulnerability and that warm connection, which I love to talk about how it creates. And from the parent to the child, I listen to you and you listen to me. Now your kids, right? Some of those refusals or not listening or ignoring or having tantrums because they don't want to do the certain thing starts to really reduce.
Yeah, I commend you on that. That's such a good summary, because I tend to use 10,000 words to say simple things. But really, at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of Sean Akers. He studies happiness and in multiple different areas. But I've determined that in my short years on this planet, that life for me is about meaningful social connection. And it so fills my bucket so much. And that can come from anyone. But the reward of meaningful social connection with your children is immeasurable for me. It gives me the greatest power and strength I've ever felt, and especially the ability to not let money, work, other things invade that space. When you get home, for me, it's not always easy, but you get home and it's like 2 or 3 hours that phone is going away. It doesn't come out. It is just focus on the kids, or in the morning, whatever the schedule allows. But it is like I feel younger. I feel more energy. I don't feel as worn down. I feel like my bandwidth is greater. Yeah. And I'm to be honest, I was really proud of myself. And it's hard to say that in front of other people, but I feel proud of myself a lot more. Like that incident where my son was melting down, and I was just like, oh, I should just go grab him and pick him up and tickle him. And I would distract him, but I'm like, oh no, he needs to go through this. It's clearly not, he's not in danger for himself or anyone else. But it was just so amazing. And I didn't coach him. I didn't say a word, but for him to come up with his own solution. My whole quest is to develop, if you're in pursuit of mental health, everything else just kind of stacks up behind it. And that's kind of my pursuit, is just it's not an attainable goal, but I just would like to pursue mental health for myself. And the rewards from your sessions and your conversations, I just can't say enough how much it's benefited my family, me, my wife, and just so grateful. And I just feel more time and more space to spend with my kids, honestly, because that's what I really want to do, is just create that fun social environment. But then when I go out, I have that ability to be like, I gave it everything I could. I need to focus on this family member or this friend, because I want to do that same thing with them, is have that meaningful social connection.
Yeah. And when things aren't falling apart at home, you have that freedom to focus on things outside of parenting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm curious, when I'm imagining parents listening right now are like, wow, did you guys work together for years? Like, Joe, how long did it take till you saw changes? Years? Months?
I mean, honestly, within the first week, for me, I think, and again, I have no problem saying this. For me, I really needed to calm down. My temper and my energy were always very high. So if as I calm down, and the family doesn't center around me in any way, shape, or form, but I noticed even by calming my positive energy, or that, hey, let's go and take the whole day and take it over and tear the day apart and have fun. It just kind of brought the whole tone of the family down, and and then we can ramp up. It's like, oh, hey, we're going skiing. Let's all get excited and crazy and sing songs and have fun. But it's not, I had this artificial sense that as a family, you needed to operate at some high level of happiness. But in fact, just being calm and safe and able to express yourself is so much more healthy. And then you can get to that space when you need to. So I can't express how much it's helped my marriage to just, I thought that parenting was this, you had to have the same strategy. My wife and I definitely still are approaching parenting differently, but it's allowed me to see her, hear her more, and understand, like, she's literally been doing it right. She's been much calmer, and that's what I'm just trying to get to, is that calm space. And it's fun because like I said, it's brought us closer together, and that obviously makes the family easier to operate when we as parents are operating on a level, respectful, curious playing field. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And so I think you really spoke to already what's become possible in the time that we've worked together over just a few months. So what becomes, and then we'll wrap this up, but what becomes possible in your future that wasn't possible a few months ago?
Honestly, the oddest thing is my goal with you was focusing on my family. But I come from a beautiful family of highly passionate people with what I would say aren't effective communication styles. Very loud, very passionate family. I've been able to connect with my parents. I've actually applied this same model to, I really want to connect with my brother and my family more. How do I do that? And you have to and I've made space for them. So it's literally like this, not that there's anything explosive about my family, but I just would like to have that meaningful social connection. So we're doing family meetings now for my extended family, where it's just, there's nothing wrong with our in-laws or anything like that, but just finding those groups of people that matter to me. And I'm just looking forward to applying the same model. Obviously not, the child behavioral stuff, but just making space for other people intentionally has really been rewarding. I'd highly recommend things like the family meeting, though, is critical, because we've incorporated some fun tools like charting good behavior to kind of reward behavior and get those behavioral patterns consistent. Not charting to remove behavior, but we've found a way to say, hey, we're family members. We don't yell at each other. And we remind the kids of that. Or, hey, we don't use loud language or loud voices in the house unless we're happy, right? If you're excited or you're sad, let's talk about it. But just kind of setting some family rules and values. Like anytime with culture, I've learned, coming from, years and years of corporate study, that you need to create a formal culture, right? You have to literally write it down, and, the vision plan, the mission plan. But then what happens is all this informal culture develops around that culture. And that's what family and your friends, or excuse me, your family and should be, is in my perspective. So
yeah, good. And your audio just changed, so you're
excuse me.
but I can hear you now. I can hear you. So I love that. And I think you spoke to some of those type A folks who realize, like, oh, what Jill's speaking to is that there's a plan for your family. You can create value, you can create culture, you can create action plans, but in a way that feels really warm instead of rigid. And I think that's what you and your wife have really done successfully. So I really appreciate you sharing. And I got an email from somebody this week who said, Samantha, I know your program is called From Mad to Glad for creating more peace at home. But after hearing some of like all these parents' successes, it makes me feel glad. And I think I'm just going to go from glad to more glad. So I see that with your family of origin. You're going from your current family unit, extending to the family of origin. You're moving from glad to even more glad.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, I can't tell you enough. I do this. I love the knowledge and depth that you have, and it's so nice to be able to understand the biochemistry and the socio-economic. I mean, it's fun. Your knowledge is vast, and I just am so grateful for all the help for that you've helped me and my family with, and very excited to continue a relationship and continue to work together. So
yeah, I appreciate that, Joe. So hi to Chelsea from me, and thank you so much for
thank you.
sharing your family story.
Absolutely. All the best to you, your family, everybody you care about. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.